Welcome, everyone, to episode 4 of the What Sales and Marketing Got to Do With It podcast. My name is Gemma Adair, founder and principal marketing consultant of Ricoh Consultancy. The podcast aims to delve deep into the minds of sales and marketing industry leaders, uncovering what keeps them up at night and what drives their passion and how they execute successful strategies in both their personal and professional lives. I'm delighted to welcome Michaela Clement-Hayes, Senior Manager, Global Marketing Communication from Ricoh, a digital services company. Great to have you with us, Michaela.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Perfect. So first, just to kick off, what was your morning like today? How did you start off?
Oh, well, I always begin with at least one cup of coffee, probably like most people. I'm really not a morning person, but because my role is global, I often have to start really early speaking to colleagues in Greater Asia Pacific. So first thing I do is get up, have a coffee, usually in the kitchen, bit of a different change of scene because I know I'm going to be stuck in my office for the rest of the day, check my emails and then go for a walk or do a workout. Just helps me to wake up so that I don't make a fool of myself when it's really early and I'm trying to present something to colleagues. But I don't always put my camera on first thing in the morning.
Yeah, you do need that sort of coffee kick or tea or whatever your preference is, right, to kind of get your morning going. So please introduce who you are and what you do.
So I'm Michaela. I have worked in some kind of marketing role for I don't even know how long it's been actually. It's probably about 15 years, but maybe a little less. And it's been quite a journey, really. I started off with no clue what I wanted to do, as I'm sure many people do, and just decided that maybe there was a way to work in something I enjoyed, which was writing, telling stories, that sort of thing. And I ultimately got a job as a copywriter, so telling stories for small businesses who wanted some kind of web presence, which was all very interesting. And gradually they wanted a bit more than just a sort of 1-page, 2-page website. They wanted Facebook page. So social media started to creep its way into my life. And then I moved to an agency where I was doing a lot more copywriting, but I was also doing things like PR, writing press releases, trying to pitch the companies to the press, a lot more social media, even getting involved in gamification and videos. And this sort of seemed to be a pattern for most of my career, was that I was in a role and then that sort of expected me to do a lot more than I was used to. So you start learning all of these new skills and then suddenly you're organizing events and the next day you're suddenly building a website with WordPress, something you've never done before, but you have to kind of get on with it. Because I worked in a lot of startup companies, so your marketing team is very, very small, and CEO decides that they want a new website, you need to go and build one because there's not a lot of budget for bringing in any kind of agency. So you just start learning all of these different skills, and it's one of those things where a couple of years ago I started to think, okay, well, do I want to be this person of all trades, or do I want to start focusing more? What is it that I actually really enjoy doing? And I do like the variety, much as I think my favorite part is probably that content creation side of things, where you get to take some kind of story and position it to an audience in a different way, whether it's through video or social media or just a general blog post. But I wouldn't want to just do that. I do like that I get to plan events, which might be one of the most stressful things you can ever do, but it's probably the most rewarding as well, because it takes months, sometimes years of planning, and you just think it's going to go wrong, it's not going to all come together at the end, this is a disaster. And then you get there and it all looks wonderful and you walk around the event feeling, I did this, I made this stand, I've done it. And I wouldn't be without that variety. So it's nice that marketing gives you such, if you choose, you've got such a broad range of skills and things that you can do for it.
Makes a lot of sense. You just mentioned there about working at a startups predominantly, and now you work for quite a large global organization. What was that like, transitioning from a startup doing marketing to a global organization?
It was quite a challenge at first because in startups everything is done as soon as it's decided. So this, like I said before, the CEO has an idea and you do it that day, ideally. There's no kind of need to get permission or anything. You just have to do it. So transitioning to a company that has so many people working for it and has a lot more to lose, if something goes wrong, was quite a challenge because I am very fast paced. But there are also really good things. It's nice having a lot more people around to support you. It's nice to have more people around just to chat to. And well, I think the best thing that for me from the transition was having such a supportive boss, because that was something I didn't have in a lot of startups. Some of
Okay.
them, but I think you've got a lot more support around you to help you with things when you've got questions, rather than me having to figure everything out on my own in a startup because it's just me. There are a lot of people who've got more experience that you can ask.
That's I think that's quite a very valid point. Whether you go into a startup or whether you're new to marketing, perhaps, and you just to kind of have someone there or have a team to kind of show you the ropes and kind of take you through that, whether it's one person in marketing or it's multiple people in marketing, whatever that might look like. Particularly for a sort of a junior sort of marketeer, or like I said, someone that's new, that's coming into the business or coming into marketing. Um, what you just touched on, perhaps a challenge there from the transition from startup to corporate. What challenges have you faced, if at all, throughout your career in marketing, and how did you sort of tackle it or challenge it yourself?
I think a lot of people who, whether you're junior or senior, will recognize that a challenge is often a lack of awareness and understanding of the value of marketing. I think a lot of people have this misconception that you make presentations or you make things look pretty, and it's not that at all. There's so much more to it than that. And I think there's that lack of awareness that means that there's often a lack of budget as well. So you're sort of expected to do a lot with very little. And I do think things are changing. I think that there is much more awareness of marketing. I think, the pandemic probably really showed that marketing can be really valuable because everyone was at home trying to get their message out. That actually it was then that, online selling became such a big, I mean, it was already big, but even bigger because that was the only option that we had. And I think it can also be a challenge sometimes if your sales team don't really appreciate marketing. That again is something that, I've been quite lucky. I think there's always been an understanding that sales and marketing should work together. And I love working with our sales teams. They've got so much insight of the customer that really helps with me creating that the content or whatever it is, or anything that's particularly customer facing, that all of their insight means that I've got a really good picture of the customer to be able to make sure everything that we do is really putting the customer at the heart of it. And one thing that I do, which I absolutely love, it's possibly my favorite part of marketing, is that getting that voice of customer. I love interviewing customers, prospective customers, our partners, just speaking to them, understanding what makes them tick, what their strategy is, what their challenges are. And it's just a lovely conversation to have when people are really open towards that. And obviously it helps from a marketing and sales perspective as well, but it's all about building relationships. And I think a lot of marketing is all about building relationships, especially in PR, which is my least favorite element. But even on social media, you're building relationships with people who you may never really ever meet. I mean, I've met a few people via social media and it's great. It's a really nice way to meet new people, but you're sort of shouting into the ether sometimes. But if you've built up that relationship, then you've got that connection that means you're going to be more successful.
Definitely. It makes a lot of sense. And I think going back to the point about working, marketing and sales sort of working together, I mean, that's kind of a powerhouse in itself. That relationship is quite critical, because both parties need each other. We need that. We support sales, and for order for marketing to do that, sales needs to kind of share that information, what's actually happening with the customer, the client on site. Again, you've just touched upon it there. What are their challenges and their pain points? What kind of keeps them up at night, and how can marketing sort of you know work around the messaging on that in order to kind of, give that to sales for them to sell to the customer, and to prospects and so on. So what does a day in the life of Michaela look like?
Oh gosh, it's quite, I mean, they're very different. Every day is different. It's another thing I love about marketing. Sometimes I will be up early chatting to colleagues in Asia Pacific about, the market over there. We're currently organizing an event in Greater AEP. So there's a lot of
Nice.
calls at the moment, looking into our logistics, looking at hotels, looking at customers that we would like to invite, which is again, it's very early, but it's really exciting that we're actually looking into this market. It's a market that I often feel can be quite neglected if you're based in in Europe, because Europe is so big and Americas are so big, but it's really good to actually get that relationships built with customers over there. So that's a lot of my mornings at the moment. And then I'm trying to have something very different in the afternoon. So I'm looking at AI at the moment. We're looking to do a roundtable about artificial intelligence. And I think there's so much to learn about that. There's a lot of misconception around that. A lot of people are quite intimidated by it. I think a lot of employees and any kind of business are sort of thinking, well, what does that mean for me and my job? Is it going to take over the world? Am I going to be attacked by robots?
Yeah.
All of the stuff that we're used to reading and watching films about. But it's really fascinating. And I'm quite enjoying that contrast between, a face-to-face event that will take place later in the year and also like an online roundtable, because, everything's very different. So I'm trying to be creative with all the assets I'm making, things like invitations, making sure that it really looks at the audience that we're trying to drive, but also I'm trying to make it less formal in some ways. So there's this sort of, with AI, I think you can be a little bit quirky because there is that fear and so much cinema around it that you can have a bit of fun with it as well.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And I think, you just touched upon there that you work with, I think AI definitely, that's a very hot topic. That's going to be around for a very long time, for sure. And I think it's kind of, again, there's that education piece and perceptions around AI and, negative, positive, that kind of thing. And I think it's kind of just for people to kind of educate them more on AI and what it does and the kind of positive impact it can have to marketing and other various sort of positions. You mentioned there that you've got a global role, you liaise with different sort of regions. What's that like for you in doing that?
I love it because I like to understand different countries, different cultures, and we do a lot in my team around cross-culture communications, things like that, because everyone's very different, and the time difference can be a challenge sometimes. And when we do our town halls, we have to do two, which is not a problem, but we have to make sure we've got one that certain time zones can attend and then another one that other time zones can attend, and we always know one's going to be much better than the other, and we always have different speakers and try and combine it. And it's that, is the morning going to be better, is the afternoon going to be better? But I think we're quite flexible as an organization because we do have these global roles. So like I said, I'm often up early for APAC and sometimes late with colleagues in Seattle or that side of the Americas. And you just learn to sort of work around it, that you don't have to, start at 6 a.m. and finish at 11 p.m. at night. It's not sustainable. And there are always challenges around a global role, but it just makes it so much richer, I think, because especially in a marketing sense, you've got to be really aware of the differences with culture. And we're doing a lot of account-based marketing. And when we're looking at different regions, we have to look and go, okay, well, we've done this for North America, but we need to completely rewrite certain elements of that when we're targeting the Middle East. And we need to change certain imagery when we're looking at Greater AP. We want to make sure that it's really talking to the audience. And, like I said, it is a challenge, but it's a good challenge to have, I think, that you've got this opportunity to work with people around the world, customers around the world. And most of our customers are in all of these different countries. So you have to understand the different challenges that people have in different areas, but also the opportunities in different areas.
That makes a lot of sense. I think it's quite critical, just to some of the things that you mentioned there now, just that whole, you could say, personalization. So not only do you have to personalize your messages to the other regions that you work with. You know, language, culture, you know, be abreast of all of that, but also to customers, to different clients in the regions. You know, again, how you market to one region is very different to how you market to another region. So yes, definitely some great nuggets there. You mentioned before there's some parts of marketing you like, some you don't. Can you elaborate a bit more on that?
I guess aside from events, which I love and hate, I think equally probably, I don't like PR. I don't mind sort of the press release side of things, I would say, like writing press releases, but I'm not very salesy, I don't think. So I don't like pitching to people.
Right.
It's, you know, I think it's easier in a B2C environment. When I've worked in B2C roles, it's much easier to pitch because, you know, you're looking at people coming to an event or people buying something. That I think it's a lot easier than B2B because you've got such a longer sales cycle with B2B that it's often more difficult. And it's not a case of just tweeting something going, hey, look at this amazing thing we've got, it's great, on Twitter or X or whatever it's called these days. I have no idea. You've got to have a much bigger strategy behind it, I think. So I don't do a lot of PR anymore. But I also like sales enablement. I find that really interesting because you're sort of taking what you've learned from the customer and then you're trying to position it in a way that will support the sales team and help them sell better and sell, I think, more successfully as well. So that's something that I probably didn't do a lot of until my current role, and I really enjoy it. It's nice to consider different elements. And I think another thing that, you know, it's not so much a global issue, it's just that people are all very different no matter where they're from. And some people like to watch a video to learn, others prefer to read a book or read an article, some people like to listen to a podcast. Everyone learns in different ways. So it's quite fun to think, right, this is what I want to say to my sales team.
Yes.
How am I going to do that? Am I going to do it with an infographic that's quite visual, but then also a video with subtitles for people who prefer to read while they listen? You know, we're working with people who don't all have English as a first language. So you've also got to consider things like, you know, slang or idioms and make sure that everything is accessible to everybody, that there's no miscommunication, because you can't translate everything into the local language every single time. And everyone I work with has brilliant levels of English, but, you know, there are always little things that don't translate well. And it's being aware of those things, I think, that makes it really interesting.
That's definitely important, right? When you're liaising with different cross-functional teams and regions, and never a dull moment. And I think you've just touched upon just some of the skills of the many that people in marketing have. It's you know, it's really about building relationships. It's understanding how to communicate and ways to communicate, and that kind of emotional intelligence piece as well. And there's so many different factors. It's not just a one shoe fits all. It's really about understanding the people and the person, you know, your team that you work with and so on. And yeah, there's a lot to it. Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. And one of my mentees she'll be starting her first role in marketing in September on a grad scheme.
Amazing.
And she actually studied psychology. Which is really interesting, because if you look behind the psychology of marketing, you've got that idea of different people and communications. You know, what makes somebody step into the customer journey? What makes them continue until they're ready to buy? There's so much that I don't think is fully appreciated by everybody, that, you know, psychology might not be a degree that you think goes into a marketing role, but actually, why not? You know, I studied history and Spanish. Again, you might not think that would take you into marketing, but you're reading stories, you're analyzing stories, you're looking at how people have told these stories to get people to believe them over time. And, you know, that is sort of marketing, really. So there is a little bit more of a link than you might think in certain areas. So
very true.
I don't know what degree you do, you might end up in marketing.
It's very, very true. Other degrees can definitely, there's some kind of synergy, some, you know, there. that can support you in your marketing role or your transition into marketing, right? You mentioned earlier that people have misconceptions of marketing. Is there anything that you'd like to add per se? And that could be internal perceptions, external perceptions, that kind of thing. What would you like to add?
I think that people perhaps don't appreciate how long things take. I think people assume that writing a blog post takes 10 minutes. And it can. Sometimes it can take 10 minutes. That's not something that I will deny. If it's a quick blog post, easy. But if it's an article where you've got to do all the research behind it, you've got to design it, then all of these different facets take a lot longer than people think, because I think people in marketing, part of our role is to make things look easy, that make things look polished and tell that story in various different ways. But, you know, putting a video together is expensive and time consuming. And even a really simple video edit of, you know, a podcast, for example, there's a lot that goes into it. And, you know, we make it look brilliant. But the time that goes into it is definitely something I don't think people always appreciate, because how many times have you spoken to a marketing agency or your marketing team and said, well, can you get it to me by tomorrow? And you think, not really, actually. Or the other one I've had in a previous role was, right, so what I need you to do today is make a viral video. I mean, I can't make a video probably in one day, and as making it go viral, what does that mean? So there's also that. I think there's definitely a lack of awareness around social media and influencers and how that all works, that a lot of C-suite perhaps think, oh, well, you just do this. Whereas no, there's, you know, and that's without me even saying, well, I want to do some planning behind it, or, you know, how does this fit into my strategy? That it's yeah, it definitely takes a lot. I think, and that's true of a lot of roles. I think everyone has a lack of awareness of other people's roles and how long things take.
Definitely. Yeah. And I think it's just being aware of the skills and experience that that individual has. You know, for someone coming to you and saying, oh, create a video for me, they don't quite know whether you have that skill or whether you need to, you know, outsource to an agency or somebody else, a freelancer perhaps. So it's very interesting. Or you might have a team internally, perhaps cross region or in another country, that can perhaps support and assist in that sense. But no, it's very interesting. You talked previously about sales and marketing and that relationship, and how you just love working with sales because it just helps support you when you're creating messaging, you know, the value proposition, the material, all that good stuff. What's your thoughts on the whole kind of sales and marketing alignment and the importance of it within an organization?
I think it is one of those things where it's a gradual possible relationship, that a lot of people, depending on the company as well, I would say, or the organization, what is being sold, a lot of salespeople probably think, well, I've been doing this for 20, 30 years. I don't need you to tell me how to sell. But the market is changing. How we consume is changing. I mean, you know, I no longer do my food shop in store. I do it online because it's much quicker, it's easier, you know, one of those things. You know, we all shop a lot online. Things are changing. So if you're a salesperson who, you know, used to get in your car and drive off and try and sell something, you can't always do that anymore, because also people aren't in the office anymore. So if you're trying to sell to an office, there might not be anyone there. So I think part of this, I would say, more recent drive to align marketing and sales is the fact that the world is changing, the way that everything is being done. Companies are changing, everyone's evolving in different ways, everyone's looking for something different. It's more important now to make sure that your sales and marketing teams are aligned. And it really is worth it, because you get so much more out of your role in marketing, but also your role in sales, because you've got a different perspective on everything.
Yeah.
That, you know, a salesperson can say, I want to tell the customer X. And then a marketing person could say, oh, that's great. What if we did it like this instead of this? And they think, actually, that might work, because you might have been doing the same thing over and over again, but actually try something new, see if it works, and then you can roll with that. So yes, definitely a big fan of sales and marketing teams working together.
Brilliant. No, I am that way too, for sure. Yes. Love, and I think as well, I love working with other marketing teams. I love working with sales. And I think it's about, although they are essentially two separate teams or divisions or whatnot, it's, I mean, just the ideas that can come with the collaboration in that relationship is just it's amazing what comes out of that. Great ideas, and it just makes things, more fun. You get creative, and
Yes.
you can do all sorts of things from it. So it's brilliant. Um, from some, you talked about marketing, you talked about the role, you talked about the variety and so on. For someone that's perhaps looking to get into marketing, whether that is someone has just graduated with a degree. We've said it doesn't have to necessarily be a marketing degree. It could be psychology or something like that. Or it could be someone that just wants to maybe have a change, take a different career sort of path. What advice would you give to them?
I would say that these days, I'm not saying it's easy necessarily to change, but look to your passions in your personal life, because if you're looking to move into a role, perhaps social media marketing, maybe look at your own Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, whatever it is that you use that to showcase your talent in that area. Or, perhaps your son or your daughter plays a sport, probably doesn't make much money, or, doesn't have a lot of money, offer to do their newsletter, get involved. It's always good to find experience in different ways. There are lots of courses you can do on LinkedIn for free. Look at some of the programs that are used for marketing, try and get an awareness of them, get on Canva, see what you can do, look at other programs, and just sort of start paying attention to your surroundings as well. One thing that I hadn't really paid that much attention to before I started working in marketing was marketing. That, I'd see an advert on TV when I was a child and want everything. I think now, I don't know, if I walk down a high street, I think, oh, I like what they've done there. Oh, that's how they're telling me I should buy this. And you're suddenly really aware of your surroundings and how different people are marketing whatever it is. So pay attention to that. And that really helps when you're writing a personal statement or a cover letter, to show that you've understood what marketing is and why it's important.
Yeah, no, yeah, definitely. It's really, I think you've touched upon sort of like just honing in on your passions, what you're passionate about, what you stand for. And I think there's times when it's a mindset, right? It's kind of like, well, no, I can't, but no, you can. If you, like you quite rightly said, some of those things that you touched upon there now, if you, go to your local team, or go and look at your Instagram or your social media channels. What are you doing there? How could you approach someone and just come at things in a creative way? Or perhaps it's one of those where it's kind of like, oh, I've always wanted to do that. Well, maybe come forward and kind of be creative and kind of approach that person, organization or whatnot, and who knows what will come of
Exactly.
that sort of
Another thing
relationship.
you can do, if you went to university and they have like an alumni network, is get on there. I mean, I mentor a couple of graduates from UCL, and there's a really good community on there. And I've done a few talks and talked about various things, and marketing being one, communications being another. And you can match people up. So if you're looking to get into marketing, you have that sort of 10 minutes with somebody who works in the industry, who can talk to you, answer questions, or you can arrange to have a mentor through your university, and they match you with someone who works in the industry you're interested in. And I've met some fantastic people, and sort of seen them on the first steps of their career, and seen them change jobs a few times, and it wasn't quite working. And it's really nice to sort of help build up confidence, pass on that knowledge that you've built up, and also just see what's changing and how their role and their first steps onto the marketing journey is so different from my own.
Definitely. You just touched upon there and something that I want to ask a bit more. And you said that you're a mentor right now. You have a mentee. How long has that been going on for? And is it something that you regularly sort of get involved with, sort of mentoring yeah, others?
Yeah, I've had a few. I think it's something that I personally really enjoy. I've got a couple from UCL. I've had another couple that from different channels, you know, a friend's daughter or whatever it is. And it's just really nice to see what you can share and actually realize that you have got some advice you can share. And a lot of it's not necessarily just giving advice, that it's things you can do. You know, I like to do a lot of exercises with my mentees on things like confidence or public speaking, or being put on the spot, how you deal with that kind of thing. And there are some really good exercises you can do. You know, one of the ones I like to do is give them a phrase, and they have to tell me a quick story but end with that phrase.
Right.
Or I ask them all to, and these are things that, you know, a mentor I've had did with me, so I'm passing it on. And one of the ones I really like to do is to tell them to pick a subject, something they're passionate about or really interested about, and then create a 5 to 10 minute presentation on that topic, and then present it to me. And I'll ask them questions. But because you know the topic really well, because it's something you're passionate about, everyone does a really good job, because you could talk about this all day with no preparation. But it just
Yeah.
gives you that confidence that if you put the time in, you can do it. And then asking questions on the spot, but it's about something they do know. So it just kind of triggers that fact that if you're in a meeting and someone asks you a question, that it's okay to pause before you answer. You know, it might seem like an eternity to you, but actually it's probably just a few seconds, and no one's going to mind if you don't immediately rush in. If you say, that's a good point, and then you say your idea. That most people are quite open to ideas. You know, it seems really scary when you first enter the world of work, that you don't want to ask a stupid question or say something ridiculous. But most people are quite understanding that, you know, we've all been there, and it's better to ask a question than to struggle along not knowing what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, and I think that's regardless of, you know, we've all been there, regardless of where you sit within the business, how senior you are or junior you are, or, you know, we're human. We all make
Yeah.
mistakes. We all, you know, may not have been proactive with asking questions and stuff like that. And some people are more proactive than others. But yeah, asking questions is very, very valid point. You talked about events earlier. And, you know, we all love freebies. We all love marketing sort of giveaways, and, you know, some are quirkier than others. In your time of marketing, have you picked up a quirky gift, or perhaps um, ordered some quirky gifts for an event that you did?
I don't know. I won some AirPods once. That was brilliant. I was at I think it was a Forrester conference.
Oh, love a Forrester
Yeah,
conference.
I went to a stand. I can't remember what they were called, and I got some socks, bright orange socks
Oh,
that
wow.
we have somewhere. Yeah, I won some AirPods, which was exciting. But in terms of what we've given away, I mean, I used to work for a company that did events around coffee. So
Nice.
I didn't have a stand to organize. I did the marketing for the overall event, and there were some brilliant giveaways. I mean, I highly recommend these festivals, coffee festivals in London, New York, all over the place. There's a lot of free coffee.
Lovely.
Then also, you know, various things like biscuits with, you know, your face on. That was quite an interesting one.
Interesting.
Yeah, I can't think of anything. Most places I've been, we've given away quite boring, well, not boring, but very useful, sensible sorts of things like phone chargers. We did have some sustainable coffee cups. I quite like that one. And we had a coffee
Nice.
machine, so you could
Yes. Yeah.
bring your coffee cup and have a refill throughout the
Brilliant.
day. That was an event in Luxembourg a couple of years ago. That was quite good. I always have snacks as well. Always just get a jar, put some chocolate or some sweets in it, because people love that. People are always hungry at these things, and they're going to come over, see what you're giving away, and then you can grab them for a quick chat, because
Yes.
they always want food. I've
Definitely.
actually, there was that same event. I got and I think it was a North Face backpack. That was quite a good steal, I thought.
That was a good one.
Yeah,
Yes.
so I could put all the other freebies in the rucksack when I went home. That was a good one.
I think some people, they do that, right? They go around all the exhibition stands and grab the freebies, right? What can they, and why not a North Face backpack to put them all in? So
yeah, it's very good.
But love the cookie thing. The face on the cookie, that's quite a different one. Definitely the cups and sustainability, eco-friendly sort of merchandise is always, I think that's gonna grow. That market's definitely gonna grow, and I think it's the now, and it's how can we sort of help the environment in any way we can, right? And that's within marketing, right?
Definitely.
In what we do. It's interesting, my sort of the next sort of phase of this podcast. You know, we talk about work-life balance, you know, marketer by day, you know, in the evening, or sort of outside of work. Yeah. What's your take on work-life balance? How do you currently manage that at the moment? And I'm just going to drop in there Paradise Library, and yeah, so please, yeah,
Yeah, I would love to.
so kick off. Yeah,
I am one of those ridiculously busy people that I have a quite demanding day job, and yet I prefer to fill my other hours with a variety of things. So, as Gemma said, Paradise Library is my book. I don't even know what it's called, a book blog, I suppose, that I set up 2 years ago, just towards the end of the pandemic, because I used to be a theatre critic. Well, I still am, but during the pandemic, there wasn't a lot of theatre to go and watch. And I was a little bit bored. I didn't have any kind of creative outlet. Theatres were closed. I couldn't do most of my other hobbies because you need to leave the house to do them. So I was doing a lot of body combat. I trained as an instructor for that, but I started writing about all the books I'd read because I did quite a lot of reading during the pandemic, as I'm sure most people did. And I just started writing reviews of books, and then I figured I should probably get a social media presence because that's what you do these days. And I set up an Instagram page to go with the blog, and I discovered there's this massive community of book lovers. You know, I didn't think I was the only person to review books, but I didn't quite expect there to be this ginormous community of people who love books. And it's been fantastic, actually. When I said earlier about meeting people via social media, you know, I've met up with so many people. There are lots of events that you can go to with publishers where you go and you discuss books, you get a lot of free books, which is massive plus, and you just promote books, and it's such a great hobby to have. And I used it in a way to kind of be more creative, because, you know, I work in B2B, which is great, but there's a lot less, you know, Instagram. There's no Instagram in my role. So I was using it as a sort of creative outlet to challenge myself, to see if I could, you know, learn. You know, I did a bit of video editing. I learned how to edit videos during the pandemic, and I was like, oh, I can use this newfound skill because I can create some, maybe not TikTok, but reels on Instagram. And I started creating, I don't know what I call them, like creative edits for my books. You know, I dress up, put myself in the image, and then create it. And it's been a really wonderful journey. It's such a nice thing to do in your spare time, and I love reading, so it's a nice way to sort of share those books with this broad community. And yeah, absolutely love it. So if you're into books, please check out my blog and my Instagram. We're all really friendly, and if you're thinking of starting a book blog, do it. You know, start a Bookstagram account and join the community of other book lovers.
And I have to ask, within this year alone, like I follow you on Instagram, I'm watching your feeds and stuff, and I'm like, oh my God. It's awesome. How many books this year so far? And we're the first of August. We've still got some months to go. How many books have you read?
It's about 140 so far.
That's incredible.
It's ridiculous. It really is ridiculous. I'm not really sure how I find the time.
And on average, how long would it take you to read a book? Or does that depend on the genre? Or
it definitely depends. You know, thriller that's really engaging and gripping, you know, I can get it through it in 2 hours. But something, I'm reading a Kate Moss book at the moment. I love her books, really intricate historical fiction. And I'm savoring it a bit more. I started it a few weeks ago and I'm reading a few chapters here and there, and then I'm also listening to it on audio. So if I, when I go for my walk morning, afternoon, I can listen to it. And I think that's one of the secrets. I didn't discover audiobooks until probably last year. I mean, I knew they existed, but I just couldn't get on with them.
Yeah.
But since I've managed, and I can only do it when I'm walking or cleaning or doing something really, really boring. Like I can't do it. Some people listen to them when they work. I have no idea how they do that. Or when they're driving, I also can't do that. But you've just got that time, but you're also reading and walking, and it's really nice. It's really good, I think, for mental health, just to kind of lose yourself in a book, but you're also exercising. And I've definitely managed to read a few more books that way, because all that, I don't want to call it wasted time when you're just walking, or, you know, you're cleaning or you're painting a room, renovating house as well. I can listen to an audiobook, and I'm multitasking. But I do read on trains. I read in the evenings.
Do you have a preference for book or audio?
I prefer books, but I still struggle a bit with audio. I feel like I probably miss about 10% because my mind wanders quite with audiobooks. So I definitely prefer curling up with a book on the sofa. But yeah, audio it's a really great way to get through more books. And I usually, if I want to read a book again, then I'll do an audio, because if I miss 10%, it doesn't really matter. Or if I'm, highly recommend audiobooks. And you can get them for free from your library as well, so you don't have to spend a fortune on them. That was a huge game changer. I only worked out a few months ago that I was spending all this money on books, and actually I can listen to them for free and support my library, which is always a good thing to do.
That's incredible, right? And even the physical books, right? People sharing, you know, giving on a book that you've read and sharing it with a family, a friend, or your neighbor, or whoever that might be, or just dropping them off.
I'm always posting books to people.
Yeah, exactly. Is there a particular genre of book that you like reading?
It depends on my mood. I do love historical fiction, and I love a cheeky thriller, but probably recently I've been reading a bit more fantasy. I was never a huge fantasy reader, but I tried a few last year and I quite like them. And that the kind of magical realism element I also like, where it's almost a contemporary fiction book, but then there's a little elements in, and that's the novel I'm writing is that it's a contemporary fiction with hints of magical realism in it. So
incredible.
We'll see how that goes.
And I just want to ask you, because we're talking about books, do you foresee writing a book of your own one day?
Yeah, I'm 20,000 words in.
Oh, incredible. Oh, brilliant.
Yes, I mean that's probably a quarter of an average novel. But I'm doing a writing course with Faber Academy, which it's only 3-4 weeks in, and it's brilliant. It's
amazing.
A small group of people, and we're sharing. You have to be very vulnerable and share your work, but it's really supportive, and we've got some really good tutors and some guest authors. So yeah, something else to fill my time with. But it's not really work. It's pleasure.
Oh, that's awesome. And I think it goes back to that work-life balance. Like, how do you manage? You just you just mentioned, sorry, that you were renovating your house. How do you manage all of that, from reading books to doing a course to, you know, some people, or, you know, I might say it's because you're passionate about those areas, or you love what you do in those areas. So, you know, it's perhaps you don't see it as stress, or you know, it doesn't play havoc with your mind or physical or whatnot.
Yeah,
tell us more about that.
I think it's really important to have something other than work, because otherwise that's all you have. You know, you might love your job, but you need something different, just to use different parts of your brain and sort of have that passion. And I think I'm one of those people, and I've always said, oh, I don't have time to do this, I don't have time to do this, and I have to kind of realize I cannot do everything. But, you know, I would love to speak more languages, but I can't do that as well as everything else. But I agree. I think it's a lot to do with passion. You know, I think in terms of exercise, it's something that's very important to me. And a lot of people say they don't have time. And you think, well, you could do if you really wanted to do it. You know, you would get up that half an hour earlier, or you would use your lunch break to do a workout, or you would just go for a walk instead of taking the car. You know, you can try and do that. And I'd say it's something that I was very bad at a few years ago, that I was always not using my time well. And I think putting your phone down definitely helps, because otherwise you end up doom scrolling, and definitely don't want to do that. But I think also that, you know, things you can learn from the pandemic was actually that sometimes being at home is quite nice. I think when I lived in London, I was out every night having fun, and I was having fun, but sometimes you think actually you can have fun by staying at home and actually doing things you're passionate about that might have a better impact on your life than alcohol and partying. So I think it's just about reassessing and working out what's really important to you. And if that is reading, then you'll make time for it. You know, if it is spending time with your family, then you make time for it, or whatever it may be. You know, it might just be renovating your house is all you've got time for because it's such a big project, but that's still totally worthwhile. And it's a very different kind of, like I was saying about the brain, you know, I sit at a desk all day for my job, but I quite like painting a wall. You know, I never thought it was something that I'd be that good at. And obviously I'm not perfect, and sometimes I will prefer to pay a decorator to come and do it, but sometimes I think I want to paint this myself. And the sense of satisfaction you get when you've done something that's a little bit out of your comfort zone, a little bit different, is really rewarding, I think.
Definitely. No, it's for sure. I think it's kind of allowing for that capacity, allowing yourself that capacity to explore different avenues and things like that, and really kind of tuning in to what you want. It's not about, it's easier said than done, right? It's not about,
I don't really watch TV. I think you can get sucked in. I mean, sometimes I do, you know, when I binge watch a good series, but there's a lot of rubbish on TV these days, and I sit down and I just think, no, I'd rather go for a walk with my audiobook, or go paint a radiator. Maybe not.
That gives you more like sasatisfaction, and I think it's kind of, it's rewarding in that sense, because what did your radiator look like before to when you paint to after painting it, and you know, you did that type of thing.
I'm also all for celebrating the small wins. I would have said a couple of years ago I was very much, well, it doesn't matter, it's not a big enough deal, whereas now I think, and maybe, you know, just getting older, that small things really bring me a lot of joy. That months had gone by and I hadn't put a hook on the back of my door so I could hang my dressing gown on it. I finally did it, and you know what, every day I'm really excited that it's on my door. And that took 5 minutes. So it was just that small win. And a friend, a colleague actually, said that what her sister told her to do was write down things you want to do, but do small things, medium and big, because then you don't get so overwhelmed by all the big stuff, because you can tick off some small things and feel that sense of achievement. So even if it's just, I read a chapter of a book, you did it. It's you know, don't say I will read a whole book. You know, just start small and gradually get to what you're trying to achieve. You know, I think Duolingo is a good one. You can do 5 minutes of learning a language, and you can do it on the train, or when you're going for a walk, or sitting on the sofa watching something, but you've kind of just done that 5 minutes, and it's a little step. You know, be realistic with these things. Don't start too big, start small and work your way up.
And I think it's good for the mind as well, because we set ourselves, you know, quite sort of high targets or goals or whatnot, and I think it's setting yourself up to win, not to fail. And those kind of micro sort of movements, or you know, achievements, they all add up to that kind of macro, what that kind of bigger goal looks like. So, which leads me on to my next question. What is your passion in life, and what drives you? And I think that could be essentially what gets you up in the morning, you know.
I mean, coffee is the reason I get up in the morning. I get very excited about my first cup of coffee. I think I'm quite a driven person, but I don't know if there's one specific thing that drives me. I am quite ambitious. I do have imposter syndrome a lot of the time, so I'm very much, like you just said, you know, I have to remind myself that to celebrate the little wins, and that to spin everything positively and look at success. So probably me, maybe, that I just want to prove to myself and to everyone else that, you know, I can do this. And that it's not just about being successful at work. You know, you should also aim to be successful in your personal life, be successful in your passions, whatever that looks like for you. It's going to be different for everyone. You know, I have a cat, and keeping her alive is quite something I sort of aspire to do. And as for plants, we definitely don't talk about those, but it's those sort of small things that, you know, you might be doing it for your family, you might be doing it for you might be doing it just for the money. It doesn't really matter as long as you've got something. And I think I'm very much a work to live kind of person, because, you know, I enjoy my job, but that gives me the ability to look at my passions in the time that I do have.
Definitely. And it gives you perhaps the kind of income, or the, you know, to kind of support your sort of passions and things like
Definitely.
that. And
but I think there's a lot of
yeah.
crossover, especially with what I've chosen to do. You know, I do read non-fiction books as well, and a lot of them relate into marketing, or vice versa. That, you know, I read an article or I'm writing a blog post, and that improves my book blogging, and vice versa. So I think everything's quite interlinked, and communication
Definitely.
is really important. Understanding your audience, you know, thinking about an Instagram book audience, it's very different from the company I work for's audience, but actually there are still some synergies, because you're still looking at the customer and putting them at the heart of everything. So it's just about repositioning everything you do. And I think you can apply a lot of your work tasks and learnings to your personal life, and vice versa, especially with things like, I can't remember who said it, but, you know, if you're trying to be above the line all of the time or below the line in a work environment, you can totally do that in your personal life, because you should be applying the same leadership skills and experience to everything, because there's so much crossover.
Definitely. And there's that link also about how you show up in your personal life is similar in ways to how you show up in your professional life. So it's kind of getting that right balance, you know, to what we've spoke about earlier, that whole kind of work-life balance, the balance of you, and, you know,
and it all comes down to balance.
Exactly. Balance.
To balance everything, but it's really important. I think, you know, there's a long way to get it right, especially with so many people working remotely, trying to switch off at the end of the day. It's really difficult. You can suddenly realize that it's 7 p.m. and you haven't left your desk all day, because you're just in the zone and you don't have that break. But I think it's something that everyone is getting better at, and it's becoming more important, especially as there's a lot more awareness around things like mental health. And, you know, I'm realizing I'm slouching and my back's starting to hurt. It's all those things that there's a lot more awareness around, that means that it'll start to change for everyone.
Yeah, and I think you've just mentioned it. Yeah, mentioned a great word there. The more awareness that you have, the more just, I mean, your whole world sort of opens up. In that sense. And I think the balance is very, very critical, both in personal and your professional life. Is there someone, either dead or alive, that inspires you?
So the person who tends to inspire me is probably quite a random one when it comes, like, not really anything to do with marketing, but in a way, I suppose I could make a link that I've always admired Anne Boleyn, and possibly because she was almost a nobody, but she rose up and influenced a king. And, you know, realistically, she marketed herself pretty well, and he married her.
The brand comes in there.
Exactly, personal branding. Might not have worked out entirely, but I just think that the way that she was, especially in a time where, you know, women were merely pawns in their family, I think that she has a lot that we can learn from even now, you know. And she was hailed as a witch, and she was ridiculed and all of this, and yet, you know, her daughter went on to be one of the longest reigning monarchs that we've had in the UK. And it's one of those things that maybe it's not the most typical inspirational, and, you know, maybe I'd have lost my head in those days as well, probably. But, you know, she stood up for what she believed in. She was passionate. She didn't back down just because someone told her she should. She fought for what she believed in, and whatever the consequences. I think there's something admirable in that.
That's awesome. And I think it definitely does align with marketing, the whole kind of branding, and, you know, positioning yourself in the market of things, and you know, how you show up, and what you're about and what you stand for. So definitely Anne Boleyn's quite quite an interesting one. Interesting example there. Where do you see yourself in 5 years' time?
Oh, well, the Booker Prize long list was announced today, so that would be nice. I don't think that any of the novels that I have in my head are quite what they're looking for. Same with the Women's Prize, but it would be nice to be a published author in 5 years' time, and still just enjoying life. I think, enjoying work, enjoying life, enjoying the balance between them. Probably will try to read less, not because I think there's anything wrong with that, but there's so many other things I could do, and I do love reading, but when people look at how many books I read last year, it does seem quite ridiculous, and that maybe I should read less and do more. But I'm not, I don't stay at home all the time reading. I do actually go out quite a lot as well. I'm not super boring sitting on my sofa, but there's a lot more I think I could do. I'd like to travel more, maybe move abroad, write novels, and work part-time.
Nice. Goes back to that whole balance and your passions.
Maybe,
and
yeah.
kind of making it all work for you, right? Yeah, definitely important. If you had a chance to be a superhero or have superpowers, who or what would they be?
See, I feel like what I say is probably quite obvious, but I would probably want to stop time so I could do more stuff. Then I could learn more languages, read more books, or just take a nap and
Yeah.
have some more sleep, because I suffer from insomnia, so I don't sleep as much as I'd like to, and that probably means I do have a bit more time because I'm awake more. But yeah, stopping time, and I think not just to fit more in, but also just to have that time to sort of appreciate things. That, what do they say, what is this world if full of care, we have no time to stand and stare. And sometimes it's actually really nice, and I do it in London, I do it when I'm by the sea, just to sort of look at the world around us and enjoy that, breathe in and stop for a moment. We're all so hectic and busy, and we never seem to stop. We're always running around trying to do things, that it's actually really nice just to stop and think, or not think, because thinking can be overrated, but just appreciate our surroundings and enjoy the time we have.
That's a good superpower, I think. Yeah, to stop time. I think a lot of us would rightly sort of agree with you. They'd love to stop time for sure. There's never, what do they say? There's never time in the day or hours in the day. It's just, before you know it, it's September, and within a blink of an eye. What do you want to be remembered by?
That's a really good question. I don't feel like I would be someone who would be remembered necessarily, but outside of family, it would be nice to be remembered for someone who tried her best and was happy. Maybe. I think we all try so hard to be happy, and it's actually something that's quite difficult to achieve. That it would be nice to be remembered as someone who tried to make others happy as well as themselves, but also for writing that really good book.
Watch this space. Yeah. No, that's that's awesome, and I'm delighted to know that you're actually writing a book. That's something that I wanted to ask you, given all the books that you read yourself. So I was thinking, would that have given some inspiration to write your own? So delighted about that. If you had to ask the audience a question, what would that be?
What's your story, and why should we tell it?
Love it. Love it. I love it. Love it. Love it.
How should we tell it?
And how? Awesome. And just lastly, do you have any final words to share?
I would say believe in yourself, but also, even if you don't think that you're doing the right thing, maybe you are. I would say that there's never a wrong answer or a wrong path. It's always just a different one. So if you're not sure whether you should, go left or go right, just make a decision, because either way you're going to have a positive and possibly negative, but you will have some experience out of it. And you should, and it's difficult, I appreciate it's difficult, but you should never look at things as right or wrong. You should just look at them as two different adventures that you want to set out upon.
Incredible. Wow. Oof. They were some, yeah, really powerful final words. I just want to say thank you so much for being on this podcast today.
Pleasure.
You know, it's one of those you could talk for hours because there's so many nuggets that have come out of this, and I just love hearing your journey, you know, your sort of outlook on life, and how you kind of just grab life, and just make it your own. And I think it's wonderful how you kind of get, you know, have that balance between, you know, marketing day to day, but also still being creative and bringing out that creativity in your sort of your personal life. So I'm really excited to just kind of follow your journey and see what's going to come. And definitely not a goodbye. It's you know, let's continue the conversation. Yeah, for sure.
Really.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.